Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are, and welcome everyone to our sessions, Guardians of the Line. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are here to celebrate and explore the evolving role of risk practitioners who stand as vigilant protectors at the heart of our organizations, and more importantly, our country, guiding us through the dynamic landscape where vigilance, agility, and strategic insights are paramount. This webinar originally started as just a lecture that we wanted to arrange for our postgrad in risk management students, for them to understand the intricacies of what we are trying to teach them and how it is applied in different types of companies, whether nonprofit organizations, government departments, public and private companies. So to all of our students here today, a very, very warm welcome to you all. And guys, I promised you something, so here it is. A wink, wink. There's a very, very good reason that these speakers have been chosen to be here today. So for today, myself and Ruschelle will tag team the conversations. So over to Ruschelle.
Thank you, Marisa. So I just wanted to sort of give everyone a background on why we chose the title for our webinars, Guardians of the Line. Because Marisa and myself, we see risk practitioners of the guardians of the line, and whether that is from a capacity of lines of assurance or lines of defense, they are instrumental in maintaining our organization's resilience. And they are not only facilitating processes or compiling data, but they are embedding risk management principles at a strategic level, aligning with business imperatives and objectives, and reinforcing governance structures. And to enable them to do that or to achieve that, it goes beyond the normal notion of managing risk. It's about owning it, much like our CEOs, CFOs, or CROs, and other senior risk officers who carry responsibilities for the organization's success.
Exactly like Ruschelle says. And from those drawn to risk management as a career, mastering the processes of identifying, analyzing, and mitigating risk is essential. However, those who stand as leaders in the field understand that successful risk management extends beyond just the framework and doing the basics. It requires a strategic pivot, and not like Roz from Friends, a transition from focusing to processes on embracing a deep strategic commitment to organizational health and success. Today's most effective risk leaders, like the ones on screen, are those who understand their organizations from every angle and can meet senior stakeholders with the confidence that comes from comprehensive knowledge and preparedness.
I totally agree with you, Marisa. So in a sense, the risk manager's role is almost like completing a very complex puzzle, sifting through and arranging pieces, gaining insights, and creating a clear and comprehensive picture of risk for others to support decision-making at every role. And it's about being an enabler for all organizational stakeholders, from board members to frontline staff, to navigate risk intelligently and responsibly, regardless of their role. So for today, we're very privileged to have a distinguished panel with us, each of whom brings a wealth of experience and knowledge and insight into the complexities, the challenges, and the impact of risk management. But firstly, I would like to just formally introduce Marisa Grundling, who is our HOD for Risk and Insurance at Milpark Education. She has over 14 years of experience, which started in the insurance and financial services industry, but has expanded into risk management and education. Marisa loves to push the boundaries through new teaching methodologies, and this is highlighted by her obsession with new technology and systems and how they can be utilized to push the frontiers of what is possible. Marisa is currently an associate member of OMSA, a fellow of the IISA, and a worldwide recognized tutor accredited by the University of London. Marisa has an absolute passion for education and is known for engaging teaching style and her ability to connect with her students, and her dedication to helping them succeed in their learning journey and their career prospects. She believes in a student-centered approach to education and works tirelessly to create learning environments that are supportive, inclusive, and engaging. So for our risk-specific panel members, I'd like to start off by introducing Christelle Marais, who has worked at Safco, Amatole Forestry, Kathu Solar Community Trust, the National Department of Science and Innovation, UMSA, Marsh Africa, Sasol, South African Post Office, and various clients in various industries across Africa in areas such as governance, company secretarial services, risk management, the list is long, bear with me, ethics, compliance, business continuity, risk financing, insurance, sustainability, ESG, climate change, health and safety, security, asset and liability management, litigation, and economic crime. She has served at subsidiary, joint venture, and group levels and focused on enabling ExCos, boards, and audit, risk, social, and ethics committees to govern strategy and risk and to make quality-informed decisions. On to our second panel member, Cedric Bolton, who is an experienced corporate executive with extensive business development and commercial structuring experience. He has worked at Phalanx Real Estate, Phalanx, thank you, Jasco Enterprise, Hawkstone Investment Holdings, and the SABC in executing leadership roles. He has also been active in independent governance and oversight roles for the Presidency of South Africa and the National Department of Science, Technology and Innovation. Cedric is an entrepreneurial thinker with the ability to identify partner synergies, conceptualize solutions, and commercialize end products. And lastly, he contributes to thought leadership in critical industries such as information technology and security through the publication of relevant articles.
Thank you so much, Ruschelle. So it is my great honor to introduce you then to Alex Ruschelle, who is an admitted attorney and recognized corporate leader with deep expertise in law, business management, just energy transition, sustainability, ESG, climate change, governance, risk, and compliance. She also serves as a trustee and a certified non-executive director. She has worked at Absa Capital, Barclays Corporate and Investment Bank, Sasol, the Global Compliance Institute, and the Institute of Risk Management South Africa. As a transformational leader, Alex contributes to the development of risk and sustainability skills and provides thought leadership in these critical industries through public speaking on key topics. We also have Kerry de Jonge, that is an experienced human resources executive, company secretary, and ethics officer with a strong commitment to promoting good governance, risk management, and compliance within organizations. As a passionate advocate for people and enterprise development, Kerry has dedicated her career to building sustainable, ethical, and high-performing teams across various sectors. With a particular focus on nonprofit and civil activism, she brings a wealth of expertise in managing organizational risk while fostering a culture of integrity and transparency. Kerry is deeply driven by a belief in the power of people to transform enterprises and make a meaningful social impact. Lastly, and definitely not least, is Ruschelle. So before becoming a part of the Milpark education team, Ruschelle honed her skills as a data analyst at a leading multinational corporation, where she accumulated valuable expertise in the asset management, risk management, insurance, and banking industries. She also served as a lecturer in risk management at a prominent South African university before we stole her. Anyway, fostering an environment of active engagement with her students on bank risk management, financial derivatives, and portfolio and investment management. Ruschelle proudly holds a Master of Commerce degree in risk management, and she's currently the lecturer and program oversight manager of the Postgraduate Diploma in Risk Management at Milpark School of Financial Services that launched the beginning of 2024. One aspect of teaching that Ruschelle particularly cherishes is the opportunity to inspire and empower her students, fostering a dynamic learning environment that encourages critical thinking and application of theoretical concepts.
Thank you for those great introductions, Marisa. Now, as we dive into the rest of the conversation for today, let's remember that true success in risk management is about driving continuous improvement. It's about building and enduring resilient capability that empowers organizations to not only withstand risks, but to also leverage them for growth and stability. And by the end of this session, we hope that you'll all go away with a deeper understanding of what it takes to be a risk practitioner who doesn't just defend the line, but who also strengthens it for the future and for our country. So our speakers today will each be answering all of our questions, but each from a different perspective. And I thought it would be good to just highlight those perspectives. So Christelle will be talking from a local entity perspective, Alex from a multinational entity perspective, Cedric will be talking from an independent governance member perspective, and Kerry will be talking from a constrained resources perspective. And again, thank you all for being here with us today. So let's get started. My first question will be where I'm nominating you, Kerry, to open up for us. To what extent do you believe that risk management adds value to your organization and the work that you are responsible for in your specific role?
Well, look, obviously risk management is a critical function that adds tremendous value to OUTA. An organization such as ours is particularly vulnerable to macro and external risks in that a change to government policy, for example, may require an immediate response, impacting potentially all levels and resources within the organization in a knock-on effect. No one knew of the risk of e-tolls until the gantries were upon us. So we've had to build the capacity and intent to always be on the lookout for new risks collaboratively so that if and when they arise, we are able to promptly discuss and address them. As leaders at OUTA, we've had to be constantly thinking about risks and asking ourselves, what are we risking if we say yes, but what are we risking if we say no? We have to, because risks come from all sides at all times. And without proper consideration, what hope do we have of mitigating them or turning them into opportunities? So yes, risk management is an integral part of our strategy. It gives us the advantage of being able to anticipate issues, hopefully long before they arise, and plan accordingly. And personally, I love the framework, so structured.
Anyone else who wants to add their perspective?
Ruschelle, I can just, I heard Kerry speaking almost from a unified organizational perspective. And I think if you're a person on this journey in your organization, you must almost look at your role players as you would look at distinct characters. So if I have to answer whether I think I'm adding value, I would say, but what does the board say? What am I hearing factually from the board? What do I factually hear from the ExCo members who's my team members? What do I hear from the operations guys? I can think of a few examples. If a board member in a shareholder meeting or in an AGM say, can the CRO please explain the risk appetite framework? Then the board sort of thinks there's value in what you're doing. If you hear them say something like, but we're paying you to challenge us, then you know that there's something. If they keep quiet, I often think people need to ask themselves, but are they tolerating you or are they actually wanting you there? And I think the other angle, we always talk upwards to the leadership, but if you sit in an organization where a site foreman or somebody phones you and they say, I see this thing and I think it was as a root cause somewhere on a register. Who do I need to phone? Then you also know that you're adding value. It's when risk managers sort of hide somewhere in a corner and we're too scared that somebody's going to ask us. Then you must ask yourself, are you adding value or not?
Yeah, if I may just jump in there as well, I think very important considerations, obviously. From an oversight perspective, there's a couple of things that we're looking for when we conduct our independent oversight roles over risk management. I think first and foremost, especially in a public type institution, is to ensure that, from an oversight perspective, that risk is positioned to appropriately respond to key contextual references, and maybe cover some of those contextual references, the usual, I suppose, legal type of context that you're operating in, professional standards that have a bearing on your specific organization and your specific industry that you're in, best practice, policies and procedures of the organization. So from an oversight perspective, we're really looking at the risk function, and if the risk function is actually appropriately set in that context. The second thing is to ensure from an oversight perspective that the risk function is playing the key role that it should be playing within the governance framework of the organization. I think too many times we see the risk function take almost a backseat, and especially in a governance setting, there's other functions that appear to take priority, and are more, to be quite honest, are more mature. Risk management as a function is relatively new in the management landscape, so there's still that evolution and maturing that's taking place, and hopefully with the likes of causes like this, it can accelerate that evolution and get more professionals into the industry so that they can start making a difference and playing their part. The third thing we look at is, as the risk management function partners strategically with the organization to ensure that sustainable strategic and operational delivery is taking place within the organization. And that is absolutely key, because any business worth its salt, a large enterprise that has specific strategic goals, either in the short or medium term, has to take account of the risks associated with delivering those goals. And that's where the structured risk management framework comes to bear. Now, the key to all of these is that you have to have a CRO that is able to effectively lead the development of the risk management function within the enterprise. And it's really one of the key components, because if your CRO is not mature enough, or he doesn't have the leadership skills and expertise to actually ensure that risk management is playing their strategic function, you also have a situation where, due to the power dynamics within the organization, risk management is taking a backseat. So we're really looking at, the key behavioral aspects of leadership that needs to come through, because that's one of the most difficult leadership positions you can have in a large enterprise, because you're relying mostly on resources that's not within your control. You're relying on risk owners that don't report to you from a delegation and from a structural point of view. You've got risk champions or ambassadors or whatever they call it in your organization that is not part of your structure within the organization and don't report to you directly. And you have to achieve outcomes from people that you're not controlling. So it's a very delicate type of balance to maintain to ensure that you're actually meeting your strategic prerogative within the organization. Thanks.
Cedric, I'd like to add a bit to the complexity. So not only are you leveraging resources who are not in your team necessarily, as a CRO, you may or may not be on the management team. So let me explain that a bit more. Some organizations will create the CRO as a C-suite role, but some decide that they're going to have it not on the C-suite, but with a reporting line to the CEO and even to the chair of the Risk and Audit Committee. So what it does for that CRO, it puts them in a position where they are still part of management. They are working with management. They have to make sure management are following the risk set approach, but they have to critique as well. So for those of you who are Godfather fans, the CRO is the consigliere. The CRO has license to critique. And it's an unenviable task. They have to hold up the mirror and they have to have the integrity to do that. They also have to be able to communicate very clearly, because you don't want to drive a wedge between your management team and your board. You want the discussion to flow. So that is a supercharged, highly political position to be in. And you have to have, firstly, the governance in place to enable that role. So when that risk report of yours is sitting in front of the board, management has to know what's in it. They have to know what's going to be discussed. They have to ideally have put those issues forward. Also, the risk team and the CRO in particular get to set risk appetite and tolerance, and then again hold the company accountable to that and to making risk-based decisions within those tolerances. So not always comfortable, not always the position where you are unlocking the opportunities. Sometimes you are the gatekeeper. We would like to, as risk practitioners, prefer to be the ones unlocking the opportunities, and we can do that. But at the same time, that guardian of the line, when there is a risk appetite and tolerance threshold in place, we are the ones to make that call, to remind everyone, and as part of that role, be very integrally involved in the financial decision making, leading to whether strategy can then be rolled out affordably.
So maybe Ruschelle, sorry Marisa, if I can add something that everybody said, but nobody called it by its name. And that's the fact that in this maturity that we're talking about of this individual, it's not only maturity, professional maturity, like can you understand your subject matter. It's not business maturity, like you understand your organization and its industry. It's not only maturity in terms of how old you are, it's also heavily emotional maturity. And what Alex and Cedric has both said, and I think Kerry touched on it to some extent, is the fact that you cannot take anything seriously in this job. You know, it's not about you. It's about the business. You can't take it as if somebody is angry at you or somebody doesn't like what you're saying. And even if they are, you need to, it's almost like playing chess. So you know, I'm going to say this, and then that guy is going to feel that, and this lady is going to react like this. And how do I make them all comfortable to fall on their sword here where it's safe, before we go outside to the world out there and we start looking bad? So it is really relationship intensive when you do this job. It's even with your board and independent members, you have to have that professional distance where you know you can't cross into each other's spaces, but you must find each other at a level where you say we're all working for this organization and this is what we're aiming for. So there's a very personal developmental angle to being a good risk manager as well.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with that, Christelle. Age is just a number. It is about how you will carry yourself. And so, guys, so especially for our second cohorts of students, that is why I'm so strict. Okay, you see, it's not just me. See, Christelle said it too. Name. Okay. So I think let's move to our next question. Alex, you mentioned earlier about risk reports. So, you've worked for some incredible companies, APSA and Barclays and Sasol. What, in your opinion, is in your opinion on the quality of risk reports that you receive and their contribution to the decisions that you make about the organization?
So, Marisa, thanks for that, because I've been both on the receiving end of receiving a report and also having to draft it. And it is a difficult task. So the one thing that I have seen working extremely well is if board subcommittees take the risk report and evaluate the submissions that have come in against that report. That is truly a report that is worth its salt, because what's happening is there's a check and a balance. And the board is wanting to check and see, are management understanding in a holistic way, so not just in their own silos. And I think that's where being in a multinational is incredibly challenging, because it's so big and there's such a complex value chain. Is management as a team coming together and understanding holistically? On the back of that, so being a risk draftsman and actually drafting the report, the one thing that I've found useful and helpful is not to do it in a linear, deterministic way, but rather to have a scenario-based thinking. So if one can develop against the strategy various scenarios that could play out in certain time frames, these must be time-based, then what one can do with one's risk team and methodology is put in place flags that are going to trigger whether certain decisions have to be made, maybe a decision has been missed, or whether next level activities now have to start taking place because the scenario shifted. So really what the risk report has got to do, and it's an enormously complex task, it's got to look backwards. So it's got to say, where have we come from since the last quarter relative to our trajectory? So what course is this putting us on? What are the internal factors that are within our control that we've used to move the dial? What levers have we now played with? And then what external factors are coming to bear that are beyond our control? Maybe we anticipated them, and that's what your risk team is there to do. But how are you bringing all of these together? And then you get told by the board, please, can you make that 3 pages?
If I can maybe comment or add to what Alex is saying. I've been in that position many times where I said, please, can you make it 3 pages? I think one of the key things is when you're in an oversight role, you tend to get bombarded by volumes of information and reports. And I think that's also one of the key communication skills that is required by a risk officer. You need to be able to simplify your communication, make it succinct, to the point, and get your point across. But at the same time, you're also educating, you're informing, you're driving a risk management strategy through the organization. And many times you're using your oversight structures like your board and your risk committees to reinforce your position in that governance framework. And every time you get a chance to communicate, you need to ensure that your communication is clear, is simplified, you do it in an authentic way. And, by way of your communication, you're always soliciting input and, areas for improvement, because I think a lot of times we discount the fact that, risk owners, they've got a vested interest in the process. And sometimes they're also frustrated with certain mechanics that is put into place, or procedures, or the way certain reports are structured, or the way certain forms has to be completed. And we have to have an open ear, to an extent, because you can't also be everything to everybody, to anticipate and to take that type of feedback and try and incorporate it into your reports and make your communication a lot more effective, reducing that type of volumes that especially is rising up to the level of senior executive authority within the organization. Thanks.
Thank you, Cedric. Christelle?
Marisa, yes, on what both Alex and Cedric said, you must know that the people that you are speaking to in your report or through your reports are not risk specialists. And risk management in itself has got no business value. So there's no point for anybody to say, I'm here just because I'm a risk manager. You have to actually get results through the entity. And the only tool you have is your report. So you need to find a way almost to educate the people on the board that does not have the risk skill. And I was smiling when Cedric spoke about the bulk of information. We were on the same entity at one point, and you get packs of 600 pages. And then you ask yourself, so am I now supposed to go find the conflict between what the risk manager writes in his report and everybody else? Or have they spoken to each other already? So I think it's crucially important to understand the other people that report to the very same board or committee and have the links with them before that time. And I think the last thing is you must make it comfortable for people to make the decisions that you want them to make. And by comfortable, I mean put the information in the report at the right pitch with the right amount of detail so that they can make that decision. Because if you don't, you're not going to get what you want out of that report. Thanks.
Yeah, shame. You guys really do have a different structure in your organizations. I'll be honest with you, the quality of our risk reports saw some growing pains in the beginning. Christelle was there. I'm sure she can remember. But what was important to us as a small team was to put in the time and the effort, make sure everybody understood and bought into why we're doing this, why it's important, and that they understood, okay, what do we need you to deliver? How should it be structured? Once they caught on to that, everything was, the quality was coming through beautifully, but we were still missing the intent. It takes a while to build up this knowledge, this skill set, to be able to identify risks, think of different, how is it going to affect us? How could we possibly mitigate it? What controls could we put in place? Who's going to do? So it is quite overwhelming when you are uninformed or uninitiated into the practice. So that was number one for us, was to figure out, okay, let's just make sure everybody knows why we're doing this. They agree with it. They know how to do it. Let's go. Another thing that was important to us was to make sure that our communication channels remain open, that there is always access to somebody. And yes, we are quite fortunate in, again, small team. So we have that culture. We've enforced it to make sure that there is always that access. So at any given point, any of our staff from any position can come to one of the exco and say, listen, have you considered this? We will then add that to our agenda for our next risk meeting, which we have monthly in one of our exco sessions, to go over what are the points that the staff have brought up that they feel we need to consider, and we investigate them further. So for us, collaboration and buy-in was key. An added advantage of that is that when we were able to collaborate on our risk management practices, the controls are more readily understood, accepted, and implemented by the person that they are designated to, as they were a part of the process that led to that decision. So participation drives interest, and it helped us to build up that skill in a much needed area.
Kerry, I just wanted to add on something you were saying about the participation. What we are also finding with technology is leverage it. So what we've been able to do is we've been able to put Copilot over our data. So at a click of a button, and I'm not saying we don't go and check it, but you've got a fantastic data set available. And I just see the question in the chat box about managing personalities. Take it back to the facts. What are the facts telling you? And then, Kerry, to your point, what are the controls that people have bought into? Because the more that you can keep it fact-based and logical, with responses that are financially driven and are going to, on a risk register, move the dial, you're going to take the sting out of it. You're going to remove the politics. So data-driven decisions, you're in good space.
I think Alex just reminded me, nothing sells like success, right? So it's almost like having 3 children, and if you can get the one to behave, some of the others are going to see that the sweeties go there, or the extra playtime is going to go there. So you almost have to manage it also in a way. To Zotwa's question in the chat, that it's always about the facts and the entity. You can't get away from that. But there are always people that buy into that more easily than others. And there's nothing wrong with using that to demonstrate what benefits come out of risk management.
You need to use every tool available. If it's in the best interest of the organization, you need to manage the problem, you need to identify it, you need to manage the personalities, most definitely.
And Christelle, maybe to what you're saying, sometimes, unfortunately, risk is a bit of a grudge purchase. So it's not like your sales and marketing team that are going out to earn money necessarily. But as risk practitioners, we can stop the organization hemorrhaging further money. That's incredibly valuable. But you've got to show that. You've got to show your worth. And then on top of that, where you can show what the savings would have been, the avoided added penalties, you're paving the way. If we can switch that into advising on the right strategic pathway, then we become value adding. And that's where we want to hit. That's the sweet spot.
I think that sort of opens the floor for the next question, the ability to hit that sweet spot. And for me, Cedric, you've touched on a number of skills. Each of you actually have mentioned throughout your answers a number of skills that risk practitioners need to have. So I'd like to know if, from your experience, if risk managers in organizations have enough business acumen, the practical application skills, know what you're required to do your job, and are also able to provide you with anything to help you do your job better.
Yeah, I think that's a very good question. You know, I think the key skills many times that are lacking is those softer skills. You know, the more the behavioral stuff. The technical stuff is really easy. You know, to if you got a bit of time and a bit of money, you can attend one of Milpark's courses. So that the technical stuff is a lot easier to get a hold of. But you know, the ability to collaboratively work in a large organization, bearing in mind that the risk manager or the CRO is not necessarily the risk owner. The risk owner is the person with the budget and with the resources to actually mitigate the risk at the end of the day. So the risk management function or the CRO's key skill is actually to collaborate with risk owners to get them, first of all, to identify and to accept and to buy into the risk management framework within the organization. And that also eases your reporting burden on a regular basis because the worst thing that you can do is try and report on what someone else is doing. It's out of your responsibility and out of your delegation, but you have to report on it to your oversight authority. So one of the key skills for a CRO is to be able to work in a collaborative environment. And there's there's obviously a technical governance term for it. It's a combined assurance framework. You're part of the assurance puzzle within the organization. And by virtue of that, it's collaboration with other assurance providers, but also collaboration with the first line of defense, which is normally your managers that are implementing mitigation plans. So being able to, first of all, represent the function in a mature way, with gravitas, come across as someone that obviously understands the environment, accepts the responsibilities that go with it, and is willing to work collaboratively. Being able to advocate for the risk management practice within that C-suite. And I think it was Alex that mentioned it earlier. One of the saddest things is that you've got a title of CRO, Chief Risk Officer. By virtue of that, you're supposed to be part of the C-suite. But then, you are required to report to in some cases, the CFO or the COO, etc. So that really affects the independence of the risk management function. And that happens a lot when the CRO is not strong enough to actually advocate for the independence of the risk function within the organization. And that's a key kind of soft behavioral leadership skill that's required. And the third thing is, like I said, to be able to solicit risk management outcomes from risk owners and risk champions. Also, key kind of capacity building skill that you need to have, especially with risk champions in the organization, being able to lead them, bearing in mind that once again, they don't necessarily report to you from a delegation point of view. That's people that have other jobs within the organization that are just tasked with an extra task of coordinating, the risk framework within their areas of responsibility. But being able to actually lead and represent that group, educate them, building up capacity-wise, is going to be a key outcome of one of your success factors that you need to have as a CRO. So really, I just want to emphasize those soft skills are generally the reason why risk management, takes almost a backseat where it should be strategically involved in the organization, and provide strategic input into the direction and success of the organization going forward.
So maybe if I can just touch on something that Cedric has said now. And I think one shouldn't confuse independence with combined assurance. I think a lot of people have this view. It happens in compliance, it happens in some of the other assurance functions as well. There's value for a person walking around in the organization or in a set or a specific department of the organization, looking out for what can go wrong from almost like a second line of defense, or helping people to solve problems. Because often people want to be so independent that you eventually have 9 independent functions checking one guy making money, and they all eat that guy's money. So it becomes almost a self-fulfilling prophecy in that you can't win with this thing. So I think you must see yourself. I always say to people, I cannot promote somebody that, number one, cannot solve my problems. So he must be able to preempt and understand what my problems are before I tell him. And secondly, somebody that cannot already operate 2 functions higher. So if I'm a risk manager starting to climb this ladder from the bottom, I have to all the time preempt what's happening above me and around me and help other people solve problems, because that's the way I have value. If I can't do that, because I am so independent that I can't go mark my own homework now, it means you just have the same role as a lot of other people. And then there's no real need for you in the organization.
Yeah. Sorry, everyone, from my constrained resource perspective again. My view, no risk manager is a risk manager alone. In order for you to be effective in your duties, you need to understand the pitfalls and opportunities of every position within the organization that holds a potential for risk. I'm not saying you need to go and get degrees for everything and know how to do everybody's job, but you should have some understanding of what is required, what do they face, what does the day-to-day look like, what are their challenges, what are the wins. If you hope to firstly build a relationship with them so that they can take your advice and buy in, and secondly, so that you can adequately assess what is relevant in terms of risk for that position or that department. For us, it wasn't a nice to have, but a definite need that every manager is also a risk manager, and that our risk practitioner was also a manager. That kind of worked out by itself. One works better when it understands and appreciates the other. They are too intrinsically linked to operate in isolation, but all too often they do. And that is where you all come in as professionals. You have the unprecedented ability through your knowledge, your training and experience, because when we started our risk journey, we didn't have any of that. And it was invaluable to speak with Christelle and get her input, to learn what is the correct way to go about this, what are the principles. So you have that option. You have the skill set, you've been given the education. Now you need to provide that service, and I call it a service because that's what you can do, to the rest of your management team and all of your staff. Speak about your risk positively. Speak about what it has achieved. Speak about what it could achieve, and how you look for these things. Like it's also a culture that needs to be cemented within an organization. And it's not easy, because it's very difficult to try to sell people on something they didn't even realize they needed in the first place. Like, oh, risk. I can't. Isn't there a checklist we can do for that? So secure your own access to the decision makers. And there are a number of ways. Show your value, be a little pushy, but always with a smile on your face. There's many ways to skin a cat, as was said earlier. But yes, identify the problem, propose a solution to managing it, and then manage the personalities. That is about the best way.
Kerry, I love what you're saying about make it your own. So if a risk manager is someone who can problem solve analytically, that is such a bonus, because very often risk reports are beautifully written, they're beautifully crafted, but that's where they end. They don't take it further. So something I started with my team, we arrived at one board meeting with a fake crystal ball, because what we had done was we'd written a 2050 risk report. So the technique was we put everybody in the room in a time capsule, and we were futurists. We took them to 2050 and we showed them. And there are phenomenal sources. You can actually do this. So there are projections and timelines from a financial perspective. There are so many scenarios. Obviously, Sasol's in the oil and gas industry, so we had a lot of scenarios pre-crafted, but you have to have the discernment to choose. But after we'd done that, after we'd had a taste of what 2050 could look like and what the pitfalls were, we then backcast. So we had a backcast approach to, we're managing business as usual risks today. But those are not the only risks. What about these forward-looking risks? And I think by putting that bridge in place, we created something that no other team had brought to the table. And suddenly there was a value contribution. So the organization wants to look at things. Obviously, again, Sasol's part of the energy transition. We're not the only company doing it.
Is the sound only bad on my side?
I think it's maybe on Alex's side.
Alex, your audio is going in and out.
Maybe while Alex is sorting that out, there was a wonderful saying in Sasol when I was there, and it was the whole thing about you can't make a car very fast unless you have very strong brakes on it. Because if you're going at the speed of light, you must be able to stop. And I think that's what risk managers should take on board. It's not about having a slow car. It's helping this thing to go extremely fast, to grow, to be successful. But if something goes wrong, you need to be able to change directions.
Like a Formula One car. No, sorry, I'm a very big Formula One fan. Alex, let's test your sound again and see if you're back.
I'm nervous. If it's I'll move. How's that sounding?
Better.
Okay. So I think, oh goodness, look at the time. Your time flies when you're having fun. So I think just to wrap it up, Ruschelle, if I can maybe throw to you. So from everything we've learned and, you know, the struggles that is currently in practice out there, how can education and risk management bridge these practical skills and knowledge gaps in risk professionals that they frequently encounter, like the business acumen and practical application skills and responsiveness to executive and governing body level needs?
So I think education in risk management, and particularly through our comprehensive program, the Postgraduate Diploma in Risk Management, plays a very pivotal role in addressing the practical skills and knowledge gaps that risk professionals often face. Our PGDIP in risk management is designed particularly to do just that, to bridge this gap by equipping professionals with not only the theoretical insights, but also the practical hands-on experience that is essential for bridging those critical gaps in business acumen, practical application, and strategic alignment. And how we are aiming to do this, or how we are currently doing this through our qualification, is firstly by aligning with industry. This is evident by our accreditation with UMSA, where our students complete the CRM Prof logbook through completing our module assessments. And then secondly, the incorporation of real-world case studies on industry-specific risks to strengthen the practical application skills. Then also through simulations that mimic executive interactions and allowing students to practice tailoring their approach, and their communication style. Also through guest lectures and a webinar, much like this one, from experienced professionals to provide insight into business acumen and the dynamic needs of senior leaderships. Then when also looking specifically at our learning approaches, we are adopting project-based and group-based learning, where students analyze an organization's structure and strategize risk management application, helping them build responses to executive needs, but in a collaborative way. Also through subject matter experts, like our panel here today, that assists in the development of our module content, so that we don't just recite theory, but we incorporate a work-integrated learning approach to ensure that our modules are practical and that they are able to meet what the industry is currently facing. Lastly, and also what Alex has mentioned, leveraging Gen AI new technology in our modules and assessments to match the pace of this growing.
Did we lose her?
Yeah.
Okay.
Somebody put her on pause.
It must have been the AI that heard us about it.
It analyzed the risk of what Ruschelle was saying, and it was just like, no, I'm sorry. Let me control this.
No, I don't like you talking about me.
But I think
so I think it is very exciting, especially with the module that our first cohort is on now, and it is so interesting for me to see how they are using AI, and it just takes their assignments to a whole new level, and it is so incredible to see. Sorry, Christelle.
I think, Marisa, yes, if you, because the world has got so much information available to so many people so quickly, if you haven't spent enough time every single day absorbing information as a thinking human, you're nothing better than AI. And I think it's important people understand that if you don't make yourself knowledgeable all the time, then you're going to be behind one day later. So it's almost like consistently saying, what can I do better than machines? How can I bring something that I can't do quicker than a machine, and use the machine for what it's supposed to be used, but then bring your angle to that?
Yeah, no, 100%. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's quite funny. Anita says AI will help us all pass this. That's not what I remember what you said in the beginning of the module, Anita.
Oh, good question, Kerry.
Yeah.
We're busy with that at the moment.
I think I'm going to quickly throw to questions. So if there's any questions from you guys, I did copy some of them out so far, but if there's anything that I've missed, please throw it in the Q&A box. So one of the questions that I've picked up was Lulu that asked, do you require a financial management background in order to excel in risk management? Okay, so I'll go from an academic perspective. You don't have necessarily a financial management background, but you analysis background, if I can put it like that. Any one of our panel members maybe want to add something?
Yeah, if I can, really, the good risk managers or CROs are very good all-rounders, and it's people that can logically and think in a structured way, typical systems type thinking. I think if you've got that skill innately, it's obviously very, very useful, but it is a skill that you can also learn. But I think, knowledge on a lot of different subject areas is probably advisable. I suppose, some of the ones that I've seen that are very successful has got a little bit of legal expertise as well, which helps a little bit as well. But I would say, if you're an all-rounder and you can think logically and in a structured way, then you could be a very successful risk manager. Like I said, it's all about being able to leverage those softer leadership skills ultimately. No matter what background you're from, if you're able to collaboratively work with people in a structured setting, I think you are going to be successful in any case.
And depending on the size of your organization, because obviously I don't want to speak for the rather bigger ones of us here. Things do work differently there, but a very good way to educate yourself on some of the financial aspects that you feel like you might be lacking when you are practicing risk in an organization is to go to the finance department. Have a chat with the people that work there. How does that work? Oh, why do you do it that way? What system is this? What is it for? Ask the questions. You are building the relationship, and you're also educating yourself on different parts of the business.
Yeah, and
I
Lulu,
think
if I can,
what I wanted to say, but Kerry, I think you also said it. You must just be a very curious person, and you must want to understand things right to its root, where it starts. Because if you just take what somebody tells you, I always say to people, at least ask why 5 times. If you still then have some uncertainty, then you carry on asking why. But you have to have that drive to understand things and to get to the bottom of things.
Yeah. And Lulu, I think just from the academic side, in our postgrad in risk, don't worry, we spiral you up to the top. So we do basic analysis and those things in the first module. So don't worry, I've got your back on that one. Zodwa asked a very interesting question, and she asked, what can one expect from the first meeting with a risk chair after a new board is constituted, and what are the key matters to prepare for such a meeting? I think, Alex, if you can maybe take that one.
Sure, let me jump in immediately. So very often the board is worried about what they could be sued for. So Sasol has a massive GHG emission reduction footprint, climate change. So our board want to know, what are the recent cases? Where have directors been sued because they haven't applied the business judgment rule? So I always say, what interests my boss, my board, fascinates me. So I have to go and understand, where are they exposed? What are they expected to have line of sight of? Even if they haven't, I must put that in their path, and I must understand the decisions that they should be taking. I must line them up and set them for those decisions. It's also very helpful if you understand the expertise that the board already comes with, because then you know their strengths that they're playing to. Then what you start doing is you analyze where the gaps are and where they don't have coverage. Cyber's another massive one, and boards sometimes, they're getting there. Do they have that exposure? Do you need to bring in ethical hackers? Do you need to understand from your own perspective the BCM risks? So I think just understanding what is going to fascinate my board, where do they have strength and where don't they have strength, and what are the, at the moment, current court cases where they could be sued.
Yeah, if I could maybe, sorry, Marisa, if I could maybe add a public sector perspective. I think generally in the public sector, the first items on the radar would be anything that would affect the delivery of the annual performance plan, which is effectively your, what you're committing in terms of service delivery from the point of view of an accounting officer. What are you committing in terms of service delivery to the executive authority within that specific organization? So anything that is going to limit your ability to deliver, ultimately what you've planned in your annual performance plan.
Yes. Okay. I have one question here. So that's a very academic one. It says, please explain how the 18 months work to complete 6 modules. So the 6 modules are run 10 weeks at a time. So you do it in 4 blocks. And currently you can only do 1 at a time. That's with very good reason, because it is, look, if you want something easy, this is definitely not the course for you. And I'll be very honest, it is not easy. It is quite intense. The students are in the chat. You guys are welcome to ask them. But so we do 1 at a time. On very, very exceptional cases, we will consider you doing more than 2 modules more than 1 module at a time. So that's that answer. Is there anything else? I think that wraps it up. Actually, and right on time, because it is actually 6 o'clock. So I actually want to just thank our panel members. Thank you so much for coming and sharing your knowledge with us. And especially for the students, I appreciate it so much you coming to have a chat to them and just to share your knowledge with everyone out there as well. So for everyone listening, thank you so much for joining us as well. If you are interested, please click at the bottom on the postgrad in risk management, and where we strive to have our graduate attributes of assertive, bold, creative, devoted, and ethical instilled in everything that we do. Thank you so much, everyone. Good night.